You're watching Morning at NTV.
Good morning and welcome to Morning at NTV. In case you're just joining in, you who has been a part of it once again, it is Friday, the first Friday of February 2019, and I must say I am happy, and so will you be. Now, in regards to that, let's talk about personal hygiene this morning. Or is it even an issue about personal hygiene? One thing that when people talk about this, their skins, they just crawl. People get worried. They start to imagine things crawling up on their skin. What am I talking about? Bed bugs. Yes, we're going to talk about bed bugs. And if you have them in your house, don't worry. I'm not going to say any of your names because I don't know who has and who does not have. And not only are they in your homes, they're in hospitals, they're in schools now, they're in hotels, and they're also in taxis. Can you imagine? You get into a taxi and you carry home some, and then they start to reside there because they start to breed. Now, if you do not know what a bed bug looks like, have a look at this before we go ahead. That's a bed bug. That's just one bed bug. But then there can also be a number of them, and it gets disgusting. Yes, if you just jumped for a second, those are bed bugs. And I'm not alone to have this conversation in regards to bed bugs that really look... Now, on the screen, they look big. But if you look at one on its own, it's really tiny. I've been in a taxi before, and one woman... Now, look at that. And one woman had it crawling on her. And a number of people jumped. Should we be worried about bed bugs like that? Should we just take it as an easy thing? Because apparently they don't actually cause or infect you with anything. But I am actually joined by Mala, and we're not alone to talk about bed bugs.
Right. We're going to have that conversation about this nuisance insects that we all, kind of dread. Now, in studios, we are joined by Mr. Okello Daniel. He is the Director Public Health and Environment at KCCA. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
Let's first start with this. Is this a personal hygiene issue or a public hygiene issue? Where do we start?
Primarily, it's a personal hygiene issue. When you fail to manage your personal hygiene, then it becomes a public issue.
Okay, so what do you fail to manage within that would have, because that one bed bug can be taken from maybe one person's home into a taxi, from that taxi to go to another person's home, which will eventually end up in a hotel. Someone will pick it up, take it to a hospital. It becomes a cycle. So what exactly in personal hygiene?
Yeah, bed bugs are great hitchhikers, if I may use that word. But as you say, where does it begin? It begins when you fail to manage your space, your personal space. That is where you sleep, where you cook, where you sit on a daily basis. It doesn't necessarily have to be at home. It may be in your workplace, or it may be anywhere else. And what do I mean? Bed bugs tend to breed in spaces, either crevices in the walls, where you have electrical installations, crevices, even behind your TV, anywhere that's routinely, when you're dusting, you tend to ignore. So that's where you get bed bugs there. And for bed bugs to live, they actually do need food, and their favorite food is blood. So they will tend to live in proximity to where human beings tend to hang around. That's why you are saying that in boardrooms, in hotels where people sleep, in your bed where you actually do sleep. So it starts with your personal hygiene. When you fail to manage it, then by virtue of them being great hitchhikers, you find them in taxis, you find them in offices, in schools, in hotels.
Well, an image of a bed bug, first of all, doesn't look nice. But when you talk about it being behind a TV and somehow it gets into other spaces, let's talk about where it gets into a taxi, where it could be in a hospital, where it could actually be in a hotel, where we bring in a few things like KCCA. Because a number of times we say if a car is not roadworthy, it shouldn't be on the road. But what about these bed bugs? Because it's not my fault that someone has carried it into the taxi. But now here I am taking it home.
Yeah, most of us, I think once a week you'll wash your cars, but when you're washing your cars, you'll care more about whether the car is clean. You won't care whether actually has the car been either fumigated or has it been sprayed. And also for public transportation. So washing is not enough, but we also advise them to fumigate the vehicles, possibly because they're public, once every 3 months. But also when you, like if your seats are torn, you're creating opportunity for bed bugs to be there. When you talk about the hotel, if you do not wash your beddings frequently, you're creating opportunity for them to be there. Interestingly, some of us, when you buy second-hand furniture, you buy it, you don't check whether it has bed bugs or no, so you're moving the bed bugs from one area to another. And some of us, when we are actually in our homes, there's a lot of clutter. Clutter can also be a breeding place for bed bugs. So once a year, just declutter your house. Find out what do you need, what don't I need, and get it out.
Okay. Speaking of decluttering, the other thing is people look at it as, do I need to fumigate my home? Is it necessary? Will it be a solution enough? For example, if I can't afford a new set of sofa set and I just have to go for a second hand, if I get them fumigated, is fumigation strong enough? Will it kill these bed bugs completely?
Ideally, fumigation should be the last resort. The first should be your personal hygiene. Do I declutter? Do I clean all the crevices that are actually there? Do I, like at times you may have small holes in the walls, do I make sure they're actually closed? Do I wash my bed sheets or my clothing frequently, and do I iron it out? And each time I see a bed bug, do I just kill it, or do I find out where it's breeding from, such that I can actually be able to sort it out before it becomes a problem? Now that is what you start with, the personal hygiene. And when you feel that it's out of place, surprisingly, if any of you remember, when you grow up and you get bed bugs, they use hot water. Bed bugs have been known to be sensitive to heat, above 50 degrees centigrade or 60 degrees centigrade. So most people steam. You steam these places and you'll be able to get rid of bed bugs. You don't need chemicals, but high heat steaming can be able to help you with that. So once you start with that do it yourself, then later on you can actually go to fumigation. So the first thing is to make sure that your hygiene is good, and you definitely won't have.
And this sits, how do I fumigate them, or how do I get rid of bed bugs, just playing on the safe side?
Yeah, you need to get a qualified person who actually knows what they're doing, because ideally they should be able to identify the bed bug, then test many chemicals on it to find which chemical is it sensitive to, then that is the chemical they should be able to use. Most people I've interacted with, they have the belief that the stronger the smell of the chemical, the more chance that it's going to act. So I used a very strong chemical because the smell was this bad, so it's going to work. Not necessarily. You need to actually use a chemical that it is susceptible to, then that is the one you apply.
Okay. As we talk about doing it yourself in this regard, now from my research and from also what a number of people have said, first of all, when you say the word bedbug, I tried saying it yesterday in an open space and people jumped. They were not sure why they were jumping, but they had heard the word bedbug. Now a number of people do call it ebiku. Yes, in Luganda, it's ebiku. That is how far I have gone to make sure I know about the bed bugs. And it is, we can agree it's a thing that is actually affecting a number of people within Kampala and also Kampala, out of Kampala. Because there's a district that has been infested, 77% of the entire district is infested with those bed bugs. And we could go to the conversation of, if my neighbor has it, will I get it? For people that live in apartments and maybe in flats. So the bed bug can it crawl from one house to another house?
Bed bugs have been known to move up to 6 to 10 meters for where they can be able to feed. But as I said, they're very good on hatching onto human beings and domestic animals, cats and dogs. So if there's movement of any of that from one place to another, definitely it will move. So if your neighbor has a dog and he has bed bugs interacting with it, it will get onto you, then get to your home. If he has a cat, or if you tend to visit each other as good neighbors, you'll most likely shift the bed bug from one area to another. So 6 to 10 meters, you'll actually be able to have those movements. Okay.
Now, taking over from if the fumigation fails, if this hot water fails, there's this whole perception of burn everything, and that's the only way you'll have them leave. Let's talk about burning your entire furniture because of bed bugs, because a few people have done it.
Yeah, and fumigation does work. There are chemicals that have been known to work. And what frustrates people is that usually when people do fumigate, they're actually doing it the right way. And most of the people you hire, the person in the village who says he knows how to fumigate. And we have found out that most people use what they call acaricides. Acaricides are chemicals that are used usually to treat ticks in animals. So at times they use them to actually as fumigants in households, and they may not necessarily work. So chemicals have been known to work, and they usually do work. The frustration with the people is that one, they spray blindly. You don't know where they are, so you may actually spray the house, but you've not sprayed where the breeding place is, and they keep on coming. And that's why the frustration of people saying, let's ban. But if you practice, as I said, basic hygiene, wash your bed sheets, wash your clothes, don't have clutter, you'll be amazed how much clutter we have in our homes. And once you declutter, then the chances of you having bed bugs tend to reduce. And decluttering is the homes, the offices, and the schools. The schools where there are bed bugs, people maybe are sleeping on triple deckers that are stacked very close to each other. The metal suitcases are all packed and all that, people moving, and that will actually lead to you having bed bugs.
So bed bugs love stuffiness and dirt.
Yes.
So to speak. Okay, and the people who are watching in, they're like, okay, fine, I've tried everything. I've fumigated time and again. I've tried heat. I've tried this and that, and they're not disappearing. I can as well just live with them. Is there a danger to that?
The danger is that the nuisance they cause, they are not known to pass on any diseases, but just the bites that occur due to you. And people who have already been bitten by bed bugs, when you're sleeping, when you look at your sheets, you find there are drops of blood. And that means that they actually do feed on blood. So that is a nuisance that occurs from it. That is actually there. But definitely you didn't want to have a white shirt with a bed bug on the tip of your shoulder.
Right.
So also from the society back gives you an instance of what happens in your house, that most likely the hygiene is.
So that's it, they just suck your blood and that's it, no health issues?
That is a nuisance of actually having that, but they are not known to cause any disease.
Okay. The worry of saying that, someone would be like, well, if I have them, I might as well just stay with them a little longer. Make them your best friend. But no, we are trying to get rid of bed bugs because, like it or not, these things are being carried into offices. They're being carried into hospitals. They're being carried into hotels. If you agree, and also maybe might have a remedy that you've used at your home, you could also be able to use the hashtag morning@NTV. But as it stands, we are saying no to bed bugs in 2019. As Uganda, as the entire Uganda, no to bed bugs. Now, one more thing in regards to bed bugs, and also any other bit that could be in your house. It could be fleas. Those are also there, right?
Yep.
Lice. Those kinds of things that we need to be.
Cockroaches.
What does someone do? Because I think there are a number of people who say, but we have tried to keep the surfaces clean. We have tried to make sure everything is all right. But something, they still want to stay around the house.
Let me start with cockroaches, because I know cockroaches, you find them in houses, you find them in people's cars, you find them in public places. Cockroaches, usually you'll find them in areas where there's been leftover food. Example of the cars, we usually wake up very early in the morning to take our kids to school. We don't have time to prepare breakfast for them, so you put them in the back seat, give them a snack to eat as they're going to school. They will tend to leave the pieces, some of the food on your car. When we are eating, we'll eat on the sofa and we'll leave all those pieces of food there. And that's how bed bugs, that's how cockroaches will come to your areas. In the kitchen, after supper, we'll tend to leave the leftover food lying around and say, I'll wash the plates in the morning. So cockroaches will actually come and fill your kitchen. So leftover foods should be a no-no. You should be able to put them in a bin or put them in a polythene that is tightly closed. Then you should be able to also empty your rubbish bin frequently. Then you'll be able to deal with cockroaches. For fleas, again, it's more or less the same of hygiene. You'll find fleas in dogs, fleas in cats. So if you do not handle the fleas in the cats and the dogs, then they will come to humans. So that's again is hygiene of animals and also hygiene of your place. The other, again, house flies. House flies is hygiene, kitchen hygiene. As they will say, you won't find a house fly maybe in a theater, because theaters tend to, the operating theaters tend to be very clean, so you won't find a house fly there. So again, hygiene, you avoid having cooked food lying all over the place, and once the hygiene of the place is done, then you want to be able to have house flies. Then jiggers, as you know, jiggers also.
Can you prevent jiggers, really?
if you notice that most of the people who were captured with jiggers, where they stayed, one, they tended to be destitute, and the environment was actually extremely dirty. And because jiggers primarily tend to catch the feet initially, then depending how destitute you find on any part of the body. And they will tell us that first thing to prevent jiggers is to put on shoes. And once you put on shoes, definitely you won't be able to get jiggers. But definitely you need to treat dogs and cats where you have the jiggers from. At times when there is empty land next to your place, you find the jiggers along that area. So I think when you look at every bit, and the other also mosquitoes.
Yes.
That we tend to get used to. And mosquitoes no breed in stagnant water, so once you don't have stagnant water, most likely you don't have mosquitoes. The beauty is, once you have an impregnated mosquito net, the chemicals in the net will work on the mosquitoes, they'll also work on the bed bugs, and they'll also work on any of the fleas that are actually
really?
there. Yeah. Yeah.
So everything seems to boil down to hygiene, personal hygiene.
Yes.
Pretty much.
And personal hygiene does not necessarily mean that me as a person, I've walked out of my house, I'm in this designer suit or designer shirt and I'm looking prim and proper. It is about your environment that you actually are. Well, how is your bedroom, how is your sitting room, how is your office space? And how is the hotel room that you're staying? So that is what they call the personal hygiene and the space in which you are.
Okay, so if I have OCD and you know what, I really don't want to gamble or just take things a chance. How often is it advisable to fumigate my home, for example? Because if we have public vehicles that need to be fumigated at least once in every 3 months, how about our homes?
Our homes, because by nature they do not have a lot of interaction with people, you can do it once a year, that's okay. It's a public places where you have people interacting and all that. You can do it every twice to thrice a year, depending on how busy your place is. So the busier you are, you can do it up to 3 times a year when you actually fumigate it.
Okay, but as we talk about now that people are going to try and manage their personal spaces, how about as KCCA, this is just a suggestion and maybe you could take it on, trying to ensure that we check these taxis. Let's not wait for 3 months. Because so many people are carrying these things home. You carry it home, you try and deal with it, then you go back to that same taxi, pick another one, take it back home, and it's just a cycle. Yes, perhaps KCCA should do a little more of inspection in a few places in these taxis.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely we are going to do that, not only taxis, also buses. And what we usually tell, especially the big transport people, is that each time you fumigate, the person who fumigates is supposed to give you a certificate after fumigation. What chemical, the certificate should show what chemical did he use, what are the side effects of that chemical to the human being, because such that in case you fall something, what should you be able to do, what did it act against, and the person's details and contacts. So that is when we would know that you've actually fumigated.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you so much in regards to that conversation, Mr. Daniel. Now, as it stands from research that I have carried out, and we have also been corrected, that bed bugs do not infect you with anything at all. But do know this, that a bed bug, just one bed bug, yes, can lay as many as 200 eggs in a lifetime. 200. So you could have just carried one home, and you could just have other mini bed bugs, up to 200 of them in your house. Now imagine you've carried one, it has become 200. Now each of those 200 can have another 200. So it's pretty much something just multiplying, multiplying, multiplying. A number of people don't want to have this conversation. A number of you have really secretly wanted to know about these things. So how about you start checking your personal hygiene from your bedroom to all the clutter you have in your house? How about you declutter? Then try and also fumigate, but also fumigate with the right pesticides. Okay, so keep it morning at NTV, because we're helping you with your personal hygiene, and we're also going to be talking more of music when we get back, and also reality on the ground. Remember, the hashtag is morning at NTV.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Mr.
so
Okello.
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're watching Morning at NTV.